Star Trek, the not-so-final frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast On Screen. Its ongoing mission, to take you on a journey through film and television, to try not to ramble along the way too much, to boldly go where so many people have gone before. Hello everyone, and welcome to the next generation of On Screen. I'm your host, Dylan Wright, and I'm here to take you on a journey through film and television. So if you haven't guessed by the intro to the podcast that I worked really hard on getting the timing right, so I hope you appreciated it. We're going to talk about Star Trek this time. I think it's really appropriate since last year was the 50th anniversary of the esteemed franchise, and now we have a new series coming sometime this year. It's been delayed a couple times, so that's a little iffy, but from what has been released and what has been talked about, it seems like it's going to be a really good series, and I'm definitely going to watch it, and I'll give you guys my opinions on it when that comes up. But until then, let's take a retrospective look at the Star Trek series as a whole, from the very beginnings back in the 60s to present day with the J.J. Abrams verse, the Kelvin universe if you're a really big nerd. Let's just take a look at what this franchise has done for pop culture and for sci-fi as a whole. We'll kick things off by talking about the 1966 original series that started it all, Star Trek. Now, this is the series that's definitely the biggest in the public eye. Most people who haven't seen Star Trek know about, Mr. Spock and Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise and Live Long and Prosper and all of those kind of things. And they all originated from the original series created by Gene Roddenberry back in the 60s. For the time, it was a pretty progressive show in some of the casting choices. They had a black woman as part of the main crew, Nichelle Nichols as Uhura, the communications specialist. They had an Asian man, Mr. Sulu, played by the great George Takei. They even had a Russian on the ship starting in Season 2, Chekhov, played by Walter Koenig, who wasn't actually Russian, but we won't hold it against him. And this was during the height of the Cold War, so it was really progressive to have that kind of thing on television. Now, it's still definitely a product of the 60s. There's a lot of questionable choices in regards to the women on the show and the way that certain things are treated. But in other respects, it's really ahead of its time in some of the stuff it was talking about. It really hit a lot of political issues that were prevalent then and are still prevalent today. Sure, it gets really hokey at times, and it's one of the corniest shows ever. You only have to look to the main cast, William Shatner. Some of his line deliveries are just hilarious. Mr. Spock. There's even one episode where he shouts out this. No, blah, blah, blah! Or there's even this classic. I'm Captain Kirk! It's honestly pretty hilarious, but when it gets really deep, it hits. It really hits an emotional chord. I think only the episode called The City on the Edge of Forever, where Kirk has to make a choice on whether to save this woman he loves and risk the timeline being destroyed, or have her die so that everything fits in its rightful place and his crew can go on living. And he ultimately has to make the choice to let this girl that he fell in love with going back in time perish. And it's really hard for him, and the episode doesn't end on this corny, happy note that a lot of Star Trek episodes end on. It ends on Kirk being like, let's just get the hell out of here, like in this downtrodden way, and you really see the emotion on his face. The deep complexities of Star Trek only get better as the series goes on, and a lot of that has to do with the main three cast members, if you will. James T. Kirk, the captain, Leonard McCoy, Bones, as he's called, the medic, and Mr. Spock, the science officer / first officer of the ship. They have an ethos, pathos, logos kind of relationship where Spock is the logic. He's thinking utilitarian, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Bones McCoy is more of the emotional, we have to save them, Jim. You can't, are you out of your Vulcan mind? He's very emotional, and he wants people to not suffer, and he's a doctor, so that really makes sense for his character. And Kirk is kind of the guy that ties them all together, that takes the emotion and the logic and makes the right choice. And sometimes he doesn't make the right choice, but that's where the conflict lies mostly in the original Star Trek series.